Every once in a while, you walk into a room and you just know something is happening here. The JW Marriott Turnberry in Aventura, Florida, late spring. The kind of Miami weather that greets you like an old friend who also happens to be a furnace. And inside, a few hundred of the most passionate people in aviation. Founders, pilots, instructors, entrepreneurs, military veterans, students, all under one roof, all pulling in the same direction. That was AeroSummit 2026. I'm Shawn Staerker, and you're listening to the Future in Flight podcast, coming to you from a hangar somewhere near the flight line, where there's a line of beautiful Tacnam aircraft shining in the Florida sun. Over the course of 3 days at AeroSummit, I sat down with 10 people, each one doing something different, each one doing something remarkable. 2 military pilots turned human performance coaches, a flight test engineer who's cracking the code on why flight training costs so much, the founders of a financial company that may be rewriting who gets to fly, a young CFI from Michigan training students over the Everglades, and more, a lot more. We recorded every conversation, and those conversations are going to live in their own miniseries, 3 full episodes, every interview in full, dropping very soon as part of Live from AeroSummit. You're going to want those. But first, this. Think of what you're about to hear as a walk down the hallway at AeroSummit. A door opens. You catch a few seconds of a conversation that makes you stop mid-stride. Another door, another voice, another idea you've never heard put quite that way before. 10 voices, 10 perspectives, 1 runway. Let's go full throttle, heels to the floor. Here's something nobody tells you when you start dreaming about flying. The biggest barrier might not be the aircraft. It might not be the cost. It might not even be the check ride. It might be you. And I say that with total love and understanding, because for a long time, that was true for me. I walked into AeroSummit with a question I've been sitting on for years. How do you build a better pilot from the inside out? And within about 48 hours, I had 3 different conversations that all led to the same answer, just from different angles. The first was with Tammy Barlett, former Air Force fighter pilot. She flew T-38s, she flew A-10s, she flew MQ-1s and MQ-9s. And when she left the military, she brought something with her that wasn't in any flight manual.
I flew the T-38 for the last 6.5 years of my career. And it was in that environment, because I spent a lot of years teaching. I went to weapons school and did a lot of teaching, and I love it. But what I realized is I spent a lot of time getting people out of their own mind first before I could teach them the stick and rudder skills, because it's so important. And so when I realized the content I was teaching was actually the same content athletes were being taught, high-level athletes, mental performance training for athletes. And it shifted from sports psychology to performance psychology because it applies to everyone. I started studying it and putting it all together. And, I'll be honest, when I left the military, we didn't teach the stuff that I teach, and I don't think we teach exactly what I teach. They in the military right now anyways. They are doing a little more of the take care of the human piece of it and the mind piece of it, but I would say it's more like cognitive, aptitude and speed and that kind of stuff. And yeah, they're considering the human, but what I realize is that we need to be more proactive about ourselves and taking care of ourselves as far as we got to stop blaming other people for our inadequacies, right? But also there's a flip side that people often think, well, I can't do this. I'm not sure if I can do that. That's a common thought in pilot training and aviation. A lot of people won't talk about it though, because they think they shouldn't feel like that, so they don't talk about that. And to kind of finally hone this into people are like, what is she teaching? What is she talking about? So basically what I teach in my business is I teach people how to manage pressure, recover from mistakes, and increase confidence. Because you can have all the technical knowledge in the world about aviation, but if you can't access it under pressure, it does you zero.
Tammy's company is called Cross-Check Mental Performance. And if you're a pilot, you already know why that name is perfect. The idea is simple, and it absolutely isn't. Keep your cross-check going. Don't get target fixated on the one thing going wrong in the aircraft, in the training room, in life. But here's the piece that really got me. I mentioned that for a long time, anger was the thing keeping me out of the cockpit. And Tammy didn't just nod along. She reframed the whole thing, starting with a word I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, well, let's talk about you for a second here. So You said that you recognized that this anger, I couldn't operate systems. So first of all, you're a step above most people. because you actually were aware of it. So I like to say that self-awareness is a superpower. You have to know what's going on in your side yourself. Now for you, now it's anger. Not everyone has that emotion, but I like to say that emotions are like early warning radars. You have an emotion, there's something you need to pay attention to. Okay, why am I having this emotion? Well, what am I thinking? It all comes down to what you're thinking, because there's a cycle, right? Thoughts, emotions, actions, biology, thoughts. It goes in this cycle. And thoughts are where you can change things. And that's where you have to start, right? So you were aware that you had this problem. Some people aren't.
Self-awareness is a superpower, and emotions is early warning radar. That reframe from, I have a problem, to, my system is giving me data, is exactly the kind of shift that unlocks a pilot. The full conversation with Tammy is in live from AeroSummit. Her website, crosscheckmentalperformance.com. Brandon Williams came at the same question from a different direction. A former Air Force F-15E instructor and evaluator pilot, major airline captain, and a guy who has built his entire second career around one idea. Debriefing is a skill, and most of us are terrible at it.
100%, we have a huge gap on the general aviation civilian training side, which is the whole idea why I started doing this. Is when I started working again, it was mainly safety leadership, working with other teams, high reliability industries outside of aviation, because they look to us for how we do things, whether it be checklist or crew resource management or how we mitigate human error. And so they started taking things we did. Well, when I started working flight school a few years ago, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, we know this is going to happen, but these young CFIs, or most all CFIs, they've never been taught how to do it. We talk about post-flight critiques, we talk about doing a pre-flight and a post-flight, but nowhere in even the FAA's flight instructor handbooks is there anything that talks about how to do debriefing, how to do root cause analysis, how to do lessons learned. And to your point, in the how I was raised in aviation, most of my flying early on, being in the Air Force, being a fighter pilot, we held debrief to it was almost sacred.
Brandon's phrase, don't confuse awareness with understanding, is one I haven't been able to stop thinking about since he said it. Knowing you made a mistake is not the same as knowing why. And until you know why, you're going to make it again. He also gave me something I've been using ever since, a technique he called hack the clock. It comes from his days in the F-15, and it works whether you're at altitude or on the ground having the worst day of your week.
We used to have this technique of hack the clock. First thing you do, hack the clock. What does this go back to? Flying these fighter aircraft I used to fly, almost all of them still had this old analog clocks in them. So you would really wind the clock, or you push a button to hack it, set it to 0. And so we used to always say, something goes wrong, well, first of all, maintain aircraft control. That's the first thing, fly the airplane. But then before you start throwing switches, before you start, just hack the clock. And what that does, it's almost like a mental reset, a mental hijack, if you will, to kind of make your brain calm down a little bit, take a breath, now assess. So and by seeing that clock go to 0, it's almost, again, you're setting a stake in the ground. You're kind of seeing your mind, okay, go to 0, I have time. Airplane's probably not just going to blow up or fall apart right here, right? Yeah. Now, there are some emergencies where it's critical that you have to get their plane on the ground soon.
Sure.
But for the most part, something bad happens, startle factor, hack the clock, take a breath, assess.
Hack the clock. Set it to 0. Give your brain a moment to stop being a saber-toothed tiger situation and start being an aviation situation. Brandon Williams, BrandonWilliamsSpeaker.com. Full interview and live from AeroSummit. And then there was a conversation that connected both of those threads in a way I didn't see coming. Adriana Barragan is a flight test engineer and the founder of the app Fly Orca, spelled with a K, and she told me something about flight training that honestly stopped me cold.
Most student pilots are overspending in flight training. The average waste is between $5,000 and over $10,000. People are paying twice as much just for their private pilot certificate. And what we are doing with the Fly Orca app is giving them a personal system to keep their learning continuous, because we took a look at the flight training process and we were seeing that at every step of the process we saw a lot of waste, a lot of money, time and energy and effort leaking at every step in the process, in the flight training process. So what we're doing is giving the students a personal system to ensure that the important steps of the flight training process are not only taken care of, but that they are continuous. And by doing that, if you think about a bucket with holes, you can fill that bucket with water, and you are going to see a lot of everything draining everywhere. So what we are doing is basically eliminating those leaks. The biggest issue right now is that for many years we have seen flight training as closing the gap between not being able to do something and being able to do something very well. And what that has created has been focusing too much on whether you can do that thing well or not.
$5,000 to $10,000 in waste per student, just gone. Adriana built Fly Orca to close those leaks by making the process of flight training visible, measurable, and continuous. And the philosophy she brought with her? It came straight out of the flight test world.
And to give you an example, that means that you have a student who we all want to do well, but you have that unnecessary pressure on your shoulders to perform, to do that thing well, because the focus on flight training has been for many, many years on closing the gap between not being able to do something and being able to do that thing very well. And what I bring from flight test is the fact that when we approach flight test differently, instead of closing that gap, what we do is moving from not knowing to knowing.
Moving from not knowing to knowing. Not proving yourself, improving yourself. That distinction is at the core of everything Adriana is building with Fly Orca, and it's worth the full conversation to understand why. That's in Live from AeroSummit. Find the app at flyorca.com. Aviation is a dream. It's also, unfortunately, really expensive. And if we're going to get more people into that dream, more pilots, more cockpits filled with capable and passionate aviators, then someone has got to solve the money problem and the machine problem. At AeroSummit 2026, I found people solving both. A few years back, I had the privilege of flying in a Tectum aircraft, specifically the P2008, on a 4-ship ferry from Sebring to Oshkosh, and it's one of my favorite flying experiences to date. So when I found Jacob Fenton from Tectum at their beautiful booth, I had a few things to say, and so did he.
If it looks good, it flies good. But, building aircraft is at our core. Tectum, it's a family-owned company. All of the family, for 3 generations now, everybody in the family flies. Not only does everybody in the family fly, all our engineers fly as well. So it's integrated in every single person who is involved in the manufacturing process, that it's very important for us to not only have the most beautiful aircraft, but receive the most valuable flight characteristics when we're operating the airplane. It's really phenomenal when you have so many people who share the same vision and are cut from the same cloth, coming together to build these really fantastic machines.
3rd-generation family company. Every engineer flies, and they're meeting the Mosaic moment head-on with new next-generation models, a stunning interior upgrade, and this really surprised me, air conditioning in a light sport aircraft. Air conditioning. In Florida, that's not a feature. That's a survival mechanism. But what really moved the needle for me was hearing how Tectum is thinking about the flight school as a business, not just as a buyer, but as a partner in the mission of accessibility.
Not only in the twin that we are incredibly innovative, but aircraft like our P-Mentor, a 2-seat, Part 23 certified single-engine Rotax powered aircraft that, again, is flipping the model on its head, not needing to burn 6 to 8 gallons an hour of avgas to operate, cutting operating costs in half. In the light sport world, we've been doing this for a very, very long time. We have great options like the P92, which is the most affordable out of all the aircraft options, also the smallest airframe, but offers a substantial value for flight schools with an incredible quality at such a low price point. So with the new regulations as well, with the Mosaic guidelines, we're bringing even more aircraft to market. We're bringing back our Astore.
From a twin that flies for the price of a single, to a P-Mentor cutting operating costs in half, to a Mosaic-ready aircraft coming to market with factory air conditioning, Tectum is not slowing down. Check out Tectum.com and find a dealer near you. Full interview and live from AeroSummit. Speaking of getting to the airlines efficiently, I met Dewan Roberson from Bridge Air in the exhibitor hall. Bridge Air is based in Glendale, Arizona, one of the most flyable places in the country, he was quick to point out, and they're doing something I genuinely never heard of at this scale.
Our pilots are time building 12 hours a day. Someone's under the foggles, so you're left seat, right seat, and you're able to get to the airline as quick as possible. So most pilots are averaging between 200 and 200 a month.
240 hours a month. Those are annual numbers for a lot of pilots. Bridge Air flows directly into Mesa Airlines and Republic Airways, and the platform they built to do it, 28 Pipistrel Alpha trainers, structured scheduling, left seat and right seat time, is almost like a Formula One pit crew approach to building aviators. Dewan put it best himself.
Our maintenance does a phenomenal job at keeping our aircraft up. So we're very fortunate there, and we're flying 6,500, 7,000 hours a month. So like I said, we're a little bit of a NASCAR in the sky. We just want to keep turning and burning.
NASCAR in the sky. I love that. If you're in the gap between your certificates and your airline career, these are the people you need to know. bridgeair.net, full interview and live from AeroSummit. And then there was the conversation I kept coming back to all week with the two people responsible for all of it. Anthony Gerasi and Brandon Martini are the founders of Stratus Financial, the company behind AeroSummit, and their origin story is one of the great whiteboard moments in recent aviation history.
I take my luggage, go into the plane, put on a headset, he starts taxiing, we're going 5 minutes. And you know what it opened me up to? It opened me up to what probably every aviation sees, it's freedom. You don't have to, you can, whenever you want to go, you can go now. You don't have to wait. If you want to go anywhere, it's up to you. And, it's amazing. One day, I think we were just rapping in his office, and now it's like, there's really no access to funding here. It's like, yeah, that's what I've been trying to do. I need to get funding here. It's like, going to get you into loan documents. It's like, and then we got back the whiteboard, and we whiteboarded it out, I think, over a series of a few hours. And we're like, this is much bigger than just one flight school. We can do it all.
That moment, that first flight to Catalina, turned into a finance company that is now funding flight training for students across the country. I asked them what it felt like to look around the room at AeroSummit and see the community they'd built. Brandon didn't have to think about it.
Absolutely incredible. I mean, just seeing some of the comments that they're leaving on our swap app, they're sending Leslie things, and Leslie's from Parallel Marketing, and she helped put this on. Without her, this thing didn't happen. I'm seeing the thank yous and the accolades for the world-class event that we put on, and it's absolutely insane to see those. It makes you feel so good. Yeah, I got goosebumps even thinking about it.
Goosebumps. That's what it looked like when a servant leadership mentality actually works. And Brandon's vision for what Mosaic and Part 141 modernization are about to do to this industry? Well, that's a full conversation you need to hear. Both are in live from AeroSummit. There's a version of aviation that lives behind a fence. And then there's the version we're all trying to build. The one where the fence doesn't stop anybody. Where the question, how do I pay for this, has a real answer. And where the first person a young aviator talks to actually helps them move forward. That version of aviation was all over AeroSummit 2026. If you've been to any aviation event in the last few years, you've seen Jamail Larkins. He's the first ever FAA Youth Aviation Ambassador, and he's been traveling the country, 1,100 events and counting, on a mission to make sure that no kid who wants to fly gets stopped by not knowing where to start. His platform is aviationstart.org, and it has gotten significantly more powerful since the last time I talked to him.
The AI program will give you a report of every single eligible scholarship that you have the opportunity to take advantage of. Once you read your report, you have the capability of clicking directly on the Apply Now button that takes you to the actual application for that scholarship. So we've searched through 1,700 different organizations for every single student that wants to go through. You don't have to take the time to try to figure out what organizations exist out there. We're doing it for you, trying to make your start again in aviation 10 times easier.
1,700 organizations, every eligible scholarship, auto-matched to your profile, a direct link to the application page, and scholarships, Jamail will tell you this himself, that go unawarded every year simply because nobody applied. He told me a story about that which genuinely fired me up, because if you're a student who stopped training because you ran out of money, or a student who hasn't started because you don't know how you'd ever afford it, you need to hear this.
There are quite a few scholarships that aren't even awarded each year, not because the money doesn't exist, but because people don't apply. A really great example of this is the New England Aero Club. Earlier this year, they had over $60,000 worth of scholarships that they wanted to give out. Unfortunately, they did not have enough applications. So whenever I hear the stories from students that we run into on the road that I had to stop flight training or even going to college because I ran out of money or I don't have the resources, I'm really stressed, and it makes me more motivated to get the word out there.
$60,000 in unawarded scholarships from one organization in a single year. The money is out there. Aviationstart.org. Go find it. The full interview, including the Dream Launch Tour, and what Jamail has coming to AirVenture, is in live from AeroSummit. And once you've started, once you're in the pattern, how do you stay current on where the industry's going? I'll let RJ answer that one. RJ's a CFI at Pilot Training Center in South Florida, a young instructor who came down from Michigan to train students over the Everglades. And he said something in our conversation that I want everyone to hear.
I think the best way to tackle the changing of the industry is coming to events like AeroSummit. You're listening to the industry professionals. It's not just a guy on Instagram Reels telling you about something, right? These people were selected to be keynote speakers on these panels, and it's completely worth any money that you have. There's so much information you can learn, so many connections that you can make, and also just keeping update, like aviation podcasts, Future in Flight. Great to stay updated. There's a lot of good aviation podcasts out there just to keep your professional development into check. The industry is always changing, so our knowledge needs to as well.
Stay in the conversation. Events like AeroSummit, aviation podcasts, the people around you at the airport. That's your continuing education. But I also want you to hear the part of our conversation where RJ described what it's like to actually train in South Florida, because it's one of the most vivid pictures of the unique challenge and privilege of flying in this airspace that I've ever heard.
My favorite part is the airspace. It's so complex. At least coming from what I'm used to. If you're not used to training in a busy TRACON area such as Miami, over at Tammy we will have 10 people in the pattern because we have 2 parallel runways, but we'll have 10 people in the pattern. And like coming from where I'm used to training, I would tell you you're nuts. There's like why would you let 10 people in the pattern? But it's just a normal day, and it really makes your students, 1, really good on communications because it has to be quick. 2, really good with energy management and visual separation.
10 aircraft in the pattern at once, 2 parallel runways, students learning communications, energy management, and visual separation all at the same time because they have no other choice. Now that's an education. Pilot Training Center, Miami Executive Airport. RJ's full interview is in live from AeroSummit. If flight schools are the heart of the pipeline, then someone has to make sure the heart is healthy. Tim Jedrick is the owner of Right Rudder Marketing, co-title sponsor of AeroSummit 2026, and his mission is straightforward: help 100 flight schools double their enrollment.
I think a lot of flight schools get really, I don't want to say competitive, but they say, oh, the guy down the street's doing this, and blah, blah, blah. It's actually not your biggest competitor. The biggest competitor to our industry and to your flight school is actually the boating industry, the hunting industry. It's sports, it's doing, going to law school or med school. Those are the biggest competitors. So we have to, as a community, come together and make flight training, something that's very equitable for people that are thinking about it. Because a lot of times the people just think it's not worth it. Especially with the high flight training costs, but we have to be able to share our passion to these prospects that are not in the community yet and bring them in the community. And I think that's the number one factor that's holding people back, is really not marketing themselves, not collaborating with other flight schools in the area or organizations. They need to get out there, they need to network, they need to be part of the community, they need to lock in, and they need to really talk to their prospect and guide them into the community and welcome them.
The competition isn't the school down the street. It's the boating industry. It's hunting. It's law school. We're all competing for the same dreamers, and we win by being more welcoming. Tim came to aviation the same way a lot of us did, from the outside. No family connection, no roadmap. He figured it out on his own, caught the bug hard, and has spent the years since making sure the path is clear for the next person. And when I asked him what the name of his company meant, because Right Rudder Marketing is one of the better names in the aviation business, he told me a story that I think captures exactly why the best ideas often come from the cockpit.
Something just kind of came up to me, and I remember my instructor, he was screaming at me the other day, like, oh, more right rudder. And I'm like, right rudder, maybe we can somehow incorporate that. Okay, right rudder marketing. Okay, there we go, boom. And then I had candidates here, there's 4 different names here. Right rudder was the last one, and I went to my wife, and I'm like, hey, I'm about to name this business, what's your take on it? And she's like, you should choose a right rudder. I'm like, you know what right rudder means? She's like, yeah, it's a joke. I'm like, yeah, it's an inside joke for pilots, and people instantly get what it is. It's a little bit more better than just saying, I'm a generic marketing agency for flight schools. It's like, I'm for flight schools, like, here it is. If you are a pilot, if you are a CFI, you know exactly what we do just off the name.
And if you've ever had an instructor yell that at you on takeoff, you know exactly what Tim's selling. RightRudderMarketing.com. Full interview and live from AeroSummit. One of the things I love most about events like AeroSummit is that the conversations keep happening long after the sessions end, over meals, in the lobby, in the golf cart at the tournament, which, yeah, there was a golf tournament. And yeah, it was exactly as much fun as it sounds. I want to close this episode with 2 conversations that felt, to me, like the soul of what AeroSummit is about. Carson Vasquez is one half of the Aviation Mentors podcast, a show that's crossed 150,000 downloads and 200 episodes, which in the niche world of aviation podcasting is genuinely remarkable. He came to AeroSummit from Southern California, made it about 9 holes into the golf tournament before the South Florida humidity declared victory, and spent the rest of the week being one of the most generous presences at the whole event. I asked him about getting into aviation. His answer started with Boy Scouts.
We were at our local airport, which is Flabob, just for where we were living at the time. And we were doing a Young Eagles flight. And I met Jim O'Brien, who was the head of the chapter, or president, I think. And I remember we were in this big historic hangar. It was real cool. And he was telling us all about flying. We went up and did a flight. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then I started working, long time mess. It wasn't child labor, don't worry. and then I started working at Next Gen Flight Academy at Riverside Airport. And our local airport bum that we love so much was Jim O'Brien. And I remember seeing him, and I was like, you're the guy that I had a Young Eagles flight from. Like, I remember the Sky Pickle, he has a green plane and everything. And it was such a weird, meeting of worlds that full circle, I came back, and sure enough, like one of the first days I was there, I met the guy that I first flew.
Full circle, the local airport bum, the Young Eagles flight, the return years later to the same airport, the same guy, now a colleague. That's the magic of this industry. And then he told me about a solo flight out of Santa Monica, a Rice Krispie treat, a Piper Arrow, and the Pacific Ocean out the window that honestly made me a little jealous. It's one of those moments where you hear someone describe why they fly, and you remember exactly why you fly.
We were at Disneyland, and I got a little Star Wars one, and I packed it in my flight bag. I was taking off out of Santa Monica, flying over the ocean, and it was my first time ever flying solo in a Piper Arrow, and I was loving it. I popped that open, like flying over the ocean. It was all scenic, and yeah,
Life is
it's
good.
vivid. So now I keep one in there all the time. And
A Rice Krispie treat in the Pacific Ocean. That's it. That's aviation. Carson and Brandon's podcast, Aviation Mentors, is on every platform. Full interview with Carson and live from AeroSummit. And that brings me to the last voice I want to leave you with from this episode. I've talked a lot today about the practical side of aviation, the tools, the training, the money, the machines. But there was a moment in my conversation with Adriana Barragan where it all came together in about 30 seconds of pure signal. She was talking about what she brings from the world of flight test into flight training, and specifically about what happens when we shift our focus away from performance and toward learning.
We move from the unknown to knowing, and we do that through observation, through preparation, through risk assessment, and reflection. And that's where learning happens, and that's when you get it. That's when you have aha moments.
That's when you have moments, not when you're trying to prove yourself, when you're observing, preparing, reflecting, learning. And that, honestly, is what every person in this episode is pointing toward in their own way and from their own angle. Tammy, helping you manage the pressure so you can actually access what you know. Brandon, building the debrief culture that turns a flight into a lesson. Adriana, closing the leak so that the process becomes the teacher. Dewan, building the volume so the reps add up. Jacob and Technum, building the machine that makes the reps affordable. Anthony and Brandon at Stratus, making sure the money side of the dream doesn't stop the dream. Jamail, making sure no kid has to figure it out alone. Tim, making sure the flight schools that train those kids are healthy enough to keep doing it. RJ, teaching students every day over the Everglades, passing it forward. And Carson, taking a Rice Krispie treat in the Pacific Ocean and reminding us why we started, and doing it weekly on an amazing podcast. Ten conversations, 10 people, one event that reminded me why I do this. Live from AeroSummit, the full miniseries, drops in 3 parts very soon. You're going to hear every one of these interviews in full. The stories behind the stories, the laughs, the fun questions, and yeah, the in-flight snack recommendations that I ask for with every interview. There's a reason this crew flies well-fed. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. If this show has brought you value, and I truly hope it has, leave us a review, share it with someone who's on the fence about getting into aviation, and tell them the fence is the only intimidating thing. Everything on the other side, that's your people. And when you find your people, everything's better. Until next time, we'll see you out there and up there.